Hello and welcome to Confronting Injustice. I am your host, Linda Solomon, joined by James Watson, our co-host, as we discuss injustices of the criminal legal system. Our guest today is award-winning writer and investigator, John Nardizzi. Thank you for being with us.
Great to be here, Linda. James, great to see you.
Thank you.
Glad to be here.
So before we talk about your work as a private investigator and an award-winning author, can you just tell us a bit about who you are and how you became involved, how you became an investigator, actually?
Yeah. So I run an investigations firm here in Boston, and I'm also a writer and written 2 crime novels, which are loosely based on some of the cases I've worked on. And I got into the investigation business years ago when I was in law school in San Francisco, and I met an investigator there. And the way he described the work was basically going out, acting almost as an investigative reporter, except you're reporting to a team of lawyers. And I had always thought about becoming a reporter, so it kind of combined my love of writing, investigations, legal stuff. So I bugged him for about a year to give me a shot, and third year in law school started working for him, and then that led to a full-time job eventually. So that's how I got into the business.
Okay. So you were in school to become a lawyer?
I was, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I took a detour.
Oh, well. And you said you bugged someone for a year? What was that about?
Yeah, so this investigator's name was Jack Palladino. He had spoken at this conference, and I was just kind of intrigued by it. So I kept calling his office. We spoke after the conference for quite a while, but I didn't want him to forget me, so I would this is sort of pre-cell phone, so I would call the office and do different things, like invite him out to dinner, invite him out to lunch. He was an Italian guy from Boston, so we had kind of this mutual, background. And for a year, he never returned a single phone call, and I kept doing it. And then his receptionist ended up calling me and saying, he actually gets a kick out of you because you're basically doing what you're going to do as an investigator. You're trying different things. You're trying to get him out the door, and nothing was working. But she said he actually was talking about you yesterday because we have a case for somebody your age and actually even my ethnicity was going to be an issue. And they said, he's thinking about hiring you to do this job, so be ready. So she kind of tipped me off, and then he called me, and that was like my intro to the business. And his first question was, "Why have you been calling me for over a year?" So it worked out in the long run. That's how I got my start.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Great.
So to stay persistent.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of the keys. I mean,
Due diligence.
you know what it is on these cases. You cannot stop. You have to keep going. Can't get dejected when, certain investigative leads dry up, and you have to just, one door closes and you got to open up another one. So
Yes.
Okay.
you know that.
Yes. And there's a lot of doors.
There were a lot of
There were a
doors
lot
to
of doors.
knock or kick, whatever
Yes,
works.
Whatever works. Can you tell us, I know that you and James have this relationship because of your work, and I would love for you to talk about that for a moment.
Yeah.
But before that, how did you become involved with the New England Innocence Project? Because that's how the two of you met.
Yeah, so these cases have been around, since the beginning of my career as an investigator. I knew about innocence cases, but there weren't that many of them. There were maybe, I think on average, I remember I was just looking at the stats on this, between 30 and 50 per year. So they kind of a little bit under the radar. Mm-hmm. And then when I was working for another investigative firm, we were presented with an opportunity to work on the case of Scott Hornoff, who was in prison in Rhode Island. I think you know Scott. Yes. And I pitched it to my old firm, and they didn't want to take it on. They thought it was too controversial. Then I got laid off by that firm and started my own company, and then went right back to those attorneys. I said, look, I'll take that case on. So I ended up working on Scott Hornoff's civil case, which was great. So that was my entree into knowing a lot of attorneys and people in this business. And then a couple of years later, I pitched the New England Innocence Project on kind of a partnership to see if we could work on cases in a more organized way, which we ended up doing.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So Just to be clear, so there were about 30 to 50 exoneree people who were exonerated yearly. About
Yeah,
30,
in
50.
the beginning.
That's major.
Yeah.
Wrongful convictions.
Yes.
But the law firm was not interested in pursuing that because it said it was too controversial, trying to help people get out.
Yeah, and it was interesting too because Scott Hornoff was a police officer who was in prison for murder.
Really?
And then the actual murder went in and confessed to the crime, so he was released almost a day later. But I remember when I pitched it to the company, the company was run by a former police officer. He wasn't sure about those types of cases.
Okay.
I'm not a former police officer. I had no
Right,
problem taking
right.
that case on. So it was an opportunity, again, there's an opportunity there. You don't know how it's going to go, so you take a risk and take it on. And obviously these cases have exploded in the last 20 years. So
Yeah, it's quite a few.
yeah,
And
I think last year there were over 200 exonerations
In 1 year.
in 1 year. I looked at it the other night, I think it was 247 in 2022. It's almost every other day, easily. Even somebody's being exonerated and leaving prison, innocent person.
I know James probably has some questions too, but I have to have you repeat that because I think most people believe if you're in jail, you're guilty.
Yeah.
And for that number of people to be exonerated yearly, what statement does that make? How
Yeah.
many more people are in jail who may be there wrongfully?
Yeah, exactly. And I think all those early cases, some of them were DNA cases, but people have a misconception thinking that they're all DNA cases. They're not. Only, I think, 20% of them involve DNA. James' case being a prime example. It was witness interviews, documents, police misconduct, prosecutor misconduct. So there's all these other factors that now we look at and we realize we don't have to just have DNA. There's all these other factors that are keeping innocent people in prison.
Incredible. Incredible.
That's why I'm here today.
Yeah.
And I'd like to thank you again.
We came a long way from bumping knees in that tiny little room in
Cubicle.
Norfolk prison.
Yeah, no, visiting for lawyers.
Yeah.
Yeah, tight squeeze.
I think the audience might be interested in hearing about your case and the work that you did.
Oh yes, well you can actually express my case. You have no problem. I have no problem.
Sure. I remember when you and I met in prison, I think it was 2019 in May, roughly, and we had this meeting with the legal team, Barb and Maddie. Rod, I think, was there, and we interviewed you, and I remember immediately being impressed by your willingness to talk about the case and be open and talk about, offer things that we could look at, which was important to get that cooperation. And, there was another case, obviously, Fred Clay's case related to yours, so we had that issue of a witness being hypnotized, which was true in Fred's case. He was out of prison. It was true in your case, so we knew that was strong. But we also had a witness in your case who had basically lied during the trial, and we had to try to prove that.
And we proved it, by another witness coming forth and stating that the person who testified against me at the trial said I made a confession to her was a lie.
Yeah.
And the own family member came forward and and said that James been in prison for a long time, and now I know he was for something he didn't do. And she would not go along with the shenanigans of her mother, so she turned around and talked to Jill. Or what she talked to Jill?
Jill did some of the interviews. I did some of the interviews. So, we knew potentially that we had heard these rumors that this witness who basically framed James on the case had, over the years, taken that story back and basically admitted that she had lied or been pressured. I mean, the police really worked on her, and some of the things that they did were dubious tactics, to say the least. I mean, showing a witness pictures of the victim in the case, as if that has anything to do with what that witness saw, to try to inflame her that James was a bad guy.
Right.
All those things, all those tactics of saying nobody would believe her if she stuck to her story. Her original story was you had nothing to do with it, and she changed it over time.
Yes.
So when we finally found people who could tell us that, yes, she's admitted that that story was not true, and she explained why that she had done it. I remember just feeling like when I first heard this other person saying, look, here's what happened in that case, I remember just feeling this sense of exhilaration that we're going to actually be able to prove this. You know, I remember calling the legal team and saying, listen, we now have the evidence. Getting the affidavit from, I think we had 3 different affidavits, all about this witness recanting. It was incredible moment.
Yes.
Feeling like this is going to work. Yeah.
Took 41 years later.
41 years later.
41 years later.
Yeah.
It sounds like material that you would put in a book, and I'd love to talk about that. But before we do, you know, you talk about dubious actions on the part of police officers and district attorneys.
Yeah.
This witness was actually moved out of state with her children so that she would not be able to talk to anyone who might convince her to be honest.
Yeah.
And if that's not illegal, what is? One. And the other thing is, no one who lied was held accountable, not even the district attorney. I mean, not to mention that they asked for the death penalty.
Right. I know. And I mean, the greatest thing is that you and I are sitting here 5 feet away as opposed to sitting knee to knee in a prison, which is the most important thing. But it's maddening, really, that the tactics that were used, most of those police officers are long since retired or dead. Hopefully, Boston Police Department is training. I think they are training their officers differently. You know, you can't threaten witnesses. You can't threaten to take their children. You can't show them autopsy photos to get them upset. And the prosecutor in that case, we filed a complaint against him for hiding a document that basically showed that his own expert doubted that the police had properly.
Tim O'Neill.
Yeah, Tim O'Neill.
Tim O'Neill.
And but the Board of Bar Overseers did nothing. They claimed that there was evidence that he didn't, that he did disclose this information to the defense attorney, but there's no written evidence of that. They're interpreting the documents a certain way. So it's I think it's unfair and it's infuriating, really, that nobody's ever held accountable, especially in the prosecution side.
And I think it's really, really important for the public to know that the narrative that they hold about the criminal legal system is probably not, in fact, the case. 70, almost 80% of wrongful people being exonerated is because of prosecutorial misconduct.
Yep.
Yeah.
And police misconduct.
Right. Yep. There's so many factors aside from, it's not just DNA. You know, there's all these other factors: misconduct by police, bad eyewitness identification procedures, which was a factor in your case.
Very high.
So
On identification, human identification can be detrimental. You know what I mean? And they saying it's more faulty, you know, than actually a lie detector test.
yeah.
It is. It's much more.
And I think that's probably the one area that there are some real improvements that are being made in eyewitness identification procedures. You know, we've been trained on that. I've gone to training sessions just to learn how police officers are doing it differently. So there are changes, you know. For example, like when they show the photo lineup that everybody sees in crime shows, if you show that to a witness, say 30 years ago, if the police didn't get the answer that they wanted, they would redo it and do it a third time and do it a fourth time, and then maybe you'd have officers as documentation of this. They'd be saying, take a look at photo number 6, again, closely. So you're tipping off the witness that 6 is the right answer.
Right.
Nowadays, you should, you know, it's supposed to be the lineup is done by an officer who's not involved directly in the case, investigating the case, doesn't know
The person and another individual.
Yeah, doesn't know which person in the photo array actually is the suspect. So there's some safeguards that the testing has shown will be better. So hopefully, I do think eyewitness identification procedures will be better going forward. So that's important.
People are being held accountable now more so than before. Like the information that got James out was in the file. He didn't even care to take it out. Like I think it was so commonplace to do corrupt and dishonest things that they didn't even bother to take out the evidence that was used against them.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it speaks to the kind of material that you have to write your 2 novels. Can you just share, hold them up, we didn't bring
Yeah.
out copies, but,
Sure.
and talk about how you got into,
Telegraph Hill and The Burden of Innocence.
all right.
I think you know which one is about wrongful convictions through the
Yes.
title.
Burners of innocence.
Yeah. So
And
you said you were into, I'm sorry.
Yeah, and there's, when we start speaking about accountability, right? Nobody was held accountable. We understand that part. Right?
Yeah.
So, but there's other victims in this case, you know what I mean? And that's the Bohansons, you know what I mean? The brother of Jeffrey, right? Got no closure. The
Right.
case is unsolved. And all
Yeah.
that time they wasted to convict myself and my co-defendant, and they could have spent all their energy trying to get the right people.
Yeah.
But now there's nobody held accountable.
That's right.
I mean, and a young man has lost his life and has not received any justice or any apologies to the family for their wrongdoing and, you know, misleading them
Yeah.
that they had the right individual. You know what I mean? So they talked to a whole lot of people. They told different stories to different people. You know what I mean? They encouraged them. Everything's gonna be all right. We got them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And what's sad that this happened, but knowing, right, in the back of their head, they didn't really care one way or the other. If they didn't, you would have went after the wrong guy, opposed to searching for the right individual.
Right.
I mean,
And you've met the
yes, they're
Boyarzis,
they're very nice people. Very
Yeah.
nice people. And they happened to read the evidence that was presented to them, and they looked at it, and they see it themselves.
Yeah.
And when we met for the first time, you know, at the convention, you know,
Yeah. They've shown incredible grace because, like you said, they were basically taught to hate you all these years. You're the guy, you're the guy. And then they took a cold look at
exactly
the
what was
evidence
really
and said
going on.
they had doubts about it. You know, pretty tough to change your heart, and they
Yes,
did.
yeah.
You know, they looked at it in the cold light of
Yes.
of reality and said, "Hey, this is not James Watson."
They are
You can do it.
amazing. They are amazing people.
And I have to applaud them, or at least acknowledge them, because they did something. I'm
Yeah.
sure there are people who sat on juries who knew that things happened that should not have happened, or decisions were made that were not just. And I think it's important for people to know it's never too late. James lost 41 years, but it's never
Yeah.
too late to do the right thing.
Definitely.
It's just never too late. You can always do something, speak to someone. But I want to talk about your books. So tell us about your, which one, how are they different?
So the first book that I wrote is Telegraph Hill. I had written that after leaving San Francisco. Telegraph Hill is a part of San Francisco that I lived in. And my first daughter was born, and I just had a sense of time moving quickly. You know, when you have a child, I think you get a sense of that. So I didn't want to lose all those memories of working in San Francisco, because I had worked in the city and had worked on some interesting cases. So I just wanted to sort of document my memories of the city in a book. And then, you know, I am a real investigator, so I felt like I could show the actual day-to-day routine of an investigator, still keeping with the sort of genre things that people love. You got to have some action and all that stuff, but I could do it in a realistic way. So that's what Telegraph Hill was about, and it involves a investigator looking for a missing girl in San Francisco and then discovering the real reasons behind her missing.
Oh, okay. Sounds intriguing.
Yeah, yeah. And then the second book is more The Burden of Innocence. I wrote that over the course of the last 10 years based on all these cases, James' case, other cases, just so certain events that happen, and sometimes when I've interviewed witnesses, which is probably one of the most important things that we do, the witnesses are always telling their stories, and they tell them in certain ways there's kind of like a back and forth between the investigator and the witness in real life that I think is interesting to people in a crime novel, to see the investigator going step by step, getting shut down in one area and then going on to something else. So in this book, there's a crime that's committed, a murder on the waterfront, and then a corrupt police officer teams up with a gangster and frames this innocent person. Okay. So it's kind of like a crime, it's like a mystery in reverse. You know who's in prison in the beginning, but you understand that it's the wrong person. So.
And I'm sure that I know that we've had conversations where you've told us that being an investigator can be very dangerous because people have all these perceptions and they're not always cordial.
Yeah, so I think working as an investigator, I wouldn't say my job is necessarily, I would never compare it to being a police officer, knocking on doors constantly, looking to arrest people. There's a danger, physical danger level sometimes to that. But there's more danger to our job than the average desk job for sure, because we're knocking on people's doors and talking about difficult topics and people get upset. So you have to be able to diffuse the situation. It's pretty common that people start yelling or sometimes even threatening us. On this case, there was one person who threatened me. I think he felt like we were going to target him and maybe blame him for this crime, which is not what our goal was and what our theory was. But so there was an element to that, and it's just part of the job. You just kind of have to talk people down and explain patiently what you're going to do, why you're doing it, and it worked to diffuse the situation in this case. Yeah.
That individual had serious problems himself.
Right. Yeah.
He was. Yes. He was. Yeah.
Yeah. There was a history of crimes in his background, and I think he was worried that he would be
yes.
a focus of any new investigation. But as we know, I don't think anybody's really looking at this case. I mean, we identified the person who we believe committed the crime, I think, with a lot. Yeah, we did. Through the research, through some of the information James gave in terms of names of people in the neighborhood at that time. But I don't know if anybody on the law enforcement side are going to do anything.
It's interesting that instead of admitting that we made a mistake, sometimes the system is steadfast with, I don't care what you found, we're not changing our position.
Yeah.
Which is really unfortunate, but that's the case.
Right.
And how can people get your book?
So the book is in paperback and ebook, so if it's on my website. It's on all the major booksellers, Barnes & Noble, Amazon. My author site is johnnardizzi.com, and my investigative agency is nardizzi.com.
Okay, great.
So I cornered the market on
on
nardizzi.com years ago. I get emails from people in Italy that want to buy it all the time, but
really?
It's not for sale. At least I haven't gotten an offer that would make me sell it.
Okay,
yeah.
Great. And this, I think the last question is for, what would you want to say to the general public about wrongful convictions, over sentencing?
Yeah, so, I think I hope everybody understands that when we do our job, and I mean we, meaning police officers and defense investigators, we're just trying to get to the truth of these cases, and it's sad when people try to make a decision, I know what happened in the case based on a news article or something like that, and then they don't cooperate with either one. We need people to come forward and speak about what they saw. These are our neighborhoods, these are our families, our friends. So getting the information out there is important, and then understand that in James' case, everybody looked at that case, he's convicted, he's guilty. You have to have an open mind that mistakes can get made, and they're going to continue to get made. They're not going to eradicate errors from criminal trials. There's still going to be innocent people, even with the improvements that are being made. There'll still be mistakes. So if a mistake is made, fix it. Don't just act like, well, the finality of the court system is more important. It's not that's wrong. I mean, innocent people shouldn't be in prison like James.
Absolutely, absolutely. And, you know, there are, you know, confronting injustice is concerned with just addressing injustices in the system that are there. And we're not in any way, you know, people who commit crimes need to be held accountable. And so it's not one or the other. There is injustice,
Exactly.
and then there are people who need to be there for things that they've done. But,
right.
you know, for people who shouldn't be there, who are over-sentenced, or we should feel compelled to do something.
Absolutely, yeah.
Thank you for your work, for your dedication, and your passion, and we thank
My
you
freedom.
for... Absolutely.
Thank you for allowing me to be here today. And one of the greatest things, and I always tell people this, is, you know, I started out with a client, and I have a friend, and that's the ultimate thing. I mean, you don't know that, it's not always the case, but we, you know, we started out bumping knees in a cramped prison, and now we have, you know, so many interests together. We're both phenomenal amateur pool players. We have dinners together, and, we've talked about so many things with our families and our hopes, and that means everything.
Absolutely.
So,
Thank you very much
thank you.
for joining
Let's
us
hope for
today.
a better world.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you.